Hi, I'm Rob from Salsify, and I'm here today to talk about applying Agile to data. Now, as an engineer, as a member of IT, you know the differences between Waterfall as a development methodology and Agile as a development methodology. Back in the day with Waterfall, you would gather all your requirements and you'd create a project plan and you'd execute on that project plan until you deliver the product. With Agile, the big shift in the late 90s and early aughts was instead of assuming that you could get all the product requirements ahead of time for your product, you would just gather enough to get started and you'd release an early product and you'd get feedback directly from the customers. And that would give you your next set of requirements. So you'd release early and often, and a lot of your releases and a lot of your work would be at the response of what the customer wanted. This is exacerbated obviously with the cloud, where at Salsify, for example, we release product multiple times a day and we can measure the response across our entire customer base and get a sense of what's working and not working. So Agile even today has gone to almost an extreme where you could do constant response development to what's happening with your customer base and what's happening in the market in general. So I want to apply that not to development methodology, but to data management, to the data itself. When companies were first digitizing, when brand manufacturers were first not getting online, I'm even talking before getting online, when brand manufacturers were really building ERP systems and that type of foundational technology out, they realized that that data mattered. Data mattered so much that they had to build systems and processes and controls around getting it right. The cost to screwing up data within large organizations and large processes was very, very high. So they invested in systems and technologies that enabled them to get control of the data. The technology in broad strokes was about mastering the data. Mastering the data is where do you store it, what are the processes and controls around updating it and creating it and editing it, who has the rights, how do you absolutely know that you're not messing anything up, and so forth. Managing the process itself, you would spend a lot of time with these systems up front, designing the workflows that you wanted to execute in order to ensure that you're mastering the data effectively. And you cared about controlling the requirements. So not anybody in the organization, especially large organizations of 100,000 employees, not everyone in the organization could mess around with the data or could change the requirements. There was generally central committees that had responsibility and stewardship of defining what data requirements were. What are the fields that you're capturing? What are the rules around those fields? How do they relate to other fields, right? So all of this is really a waterfall-like approach to data management. I mean, if you think about it, you're defining the requirements up front. It's a top-down requirements definition. You're defining the project process up front, and then you're executing on the process. You're applying it sort of over and over again for each product that you've got to launch. You know, a product comes out of R&D and you apply this waterfall-like process, and then you go live. And that works really well in a linear production world where you're creating products, then creating large batches of products en masse at scale and shipping them around the world to distributors and retailers. Getting the data right mattered quite a bit in this world. So the technology that companies deployed to do this really treated data with a lot of TLC. Today, this is many generations of technology later, e-commerce and digital shelf merchandising in general have really put a lot of pressure on this older way of mastering data. And in the current market, you're not just trying to get data right for your internal systems. You're not trying to get data right for shipping. You're trying to get data right for the customer. As a brand manufacturer, you put data on Amazon. You put data on Grainger. You put data on Walmart. You put data on Ingram Micro, right? That's not something that most brand manufacturers have really done before at a systematic level. So as opposed to mastering the data for storage, you're catering to the customer. Instead of managing to a process, in this new world, you're managing to outcomes. You're managing to search rankings. You're managing to conversion rates. You're managing to customer satisfaction. You're managing to star review ratings, right? Instead of controlling the requirements centrally, most of the requirements you're outsourced. Most of them are defined for you by your distribution and retail partners. You have no control of them. Even if you're selling direct to consumer on Salesforce Commerce Cloud or BigCommerce or Shopify or your own homegrown site, Your e-com team is defining the requirements of what goes into that site. It's not managed corporate-wide centrally. It's typically managed by the team that's running the site. So in this world, the data management techniques that you can use, it's not a top-down management style. It's not defining the requirements up front, defining the process up front, and executing effectively. This is a lot more like agile development for data, right? This is, you're trying to get an MVP of the data out there in the world. You want to see what the response is for customers that are interacting with that data. Page views, search rankings, conversions, things like that. You want to adjust the next version, the next release of the data quickly in response to that, and so on and so forth. Similarly, as requirements change in the market, Grainger, for example, has over 8,000 different categories, each of which has a different set of requirements, and they change weekly. So in order to keep up with Grainger distribution, you've really got to be on your toes, right? As the requirements change, you want to have a very responsive way of creating new data. A lot of these retailers and distributors will ask for brand new fields that you've never mastered anywhere. As a company, you want to be able to get that data out to them faster than your competitors to take advantage of new fields. And that means that you can't master everything centrally. You can't go through a steering committee. Just like with development, as you transitioned from waterfall to agile, the management organization focused less on the process, managing process and management requirements, and they shifted to focusing more on managing to outcomes and supporting their teams. And that meant that a lot of the day-to-day decisions get made by people that are closer to the problem. The actual engineers, product managers, engineering managers, scrum masters that are close to the development process. The same thing is true here for data. For agile data management to work, you're really pushing a lot of the responsibility and the calls down the organization, and the management should be managing to outcomes and giving more freedom to the individual users that are close to the problem so that they can turn the cycle as fast as possible. So I hope that's helpful. I think that e-commerce really has created this new set of requirements that are fast changing that brands have to deal with. Older technology that's focused on this type of approach to data management really don't work in this new world. They still are appropriate for managing lots of data that's important for the supply chain, important for logistics management, important for regulatory governance and things like that. But increasingly, you're seeing lots and lots of content, lots and lots of data that benefit from a very, very different approach and a decentralized approach and an agile approach within an organization to manage for the satisfaction of your customers.